Wealthy Muslim.
This guy, Hasan Piker.
There are some problems here. Sorry, big time.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
Alrighty, welcome to the Young Turks, the online news show. Cenk Uygur sparing with you guys. We're ready to have an excellent show. I know Anna is. I could tell from that sweater we all like. And from that set from the Lego video that I saw one day. And so we got a big show. We found out how Israel's gaming AI. We're gonna explain that to you a little bit later so they could manipulate the so-called facts that you get. How many times has Fox News pushed for war? Some startling numbers on that. The MAGA civil war continues, but then we got a civil war on our own side. So lots of Democrats attacking fellow Democrats who are criticizing Israel, of course. They were never Democrats, they were never on the left. They're always helping Republicans. They're the same people, they're all frauds. We'll tell you about that. Dana Bash gets caught, that's interesting. And then we've got interesting news out of Russia and our secret trip there. So tons to get to. So you know what? Call me crazy, let's get started.
Why the CIA director made a mysterious trip to Moscow. John Ratcliffe meeting with Russian officials early this morning. Trump downplayed the significance of the visit. Here he is.
He's there on, very sort of semi-routine. I hate to disappoint people. We would like to see the war with Ukraine end.
No, definitely not routine. That's why it's startling that it happened. So America gives an explanation. Russia has already denied it. I have my own secret explanation. That'll be fun for everyone. But first of all, you got to find out the whole story, isn't it? So that's why we go to Anna.
Yes. Oh, I'm so curious what your theory is. I do not know exactly why our CIA director visited Moscow, but I will tell you what both sides are saying about this meeting, beginning with the Wall Street Journal's so-called exclusive on this reporting and the whole event. Now, remember, this is, I think, a peak example, perfect example of how the media, especially legacy media, works. Someone within our government or a group of people within our government anonymously leak something to the reporters, and then they just regurgitate it in their reporting, and that's what happened here. So it's titled, CIA Chief Surprise Moscow Trip Was to Warn Russia Not to Attack NATO, even though NATO member countries have been talking about attacking Russia incessantly, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But nonetheless, the argument is that our CIA director, John Ratcliffe, visits Moscow specifically to warn Russia in person against striking NATO. So you would be under the impression that Russia is making some moves, right? There is some indication that Russia poses an imminent threat to our NATO allies. They're thinking about striking soon. But get a load of this, okay? Bear with me as I go through the reporting here. So citing anonymous sources who were briefed on the visit, They claimed that Ratcliffe was there to deliver a warning to Russia not to attack NATO countries. Again, that sounds like it must have been an imminent threat to NATO countries. But the same piece, the exact same piece, notes this. New US intelligence assessments reported earlier by the Wall Street Journal that Russian President Vladimir Putin could try to test the resolve of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization with a limited assault on an allied country in the next few years. What? I don't believe for a second that John Ratcliffe went there to warn against attacking our NATO allies. US officials are concerned that Putin could launch an assault ranging from a cyber attack to a small scale land incursion, likely on a Baltic nation. So you're telling me that there is allegedly intelligence indicating that Russia might do like a small scale operation or strike against a ally of ours a few years from now. And that's why our CIA director needed to travel to Moscow to meet with officials there. He didn't meet with Putin, according to the reporting. Putin was briefed on the meeting afterward. But Cenk, I'm dying to know what your theory on this is. What is this about?
Okay, so what it's not about is normal Russia, Ukraine, or Russia, NATO, because they've been in this war the whole time. Trump's been president for nearly 2 years now, so there's no need to send a secret plane with our CIA chief to Russia to talk about that. And even if they're planning to attack Estonia, we've been talking about that now for about a decade, maybe more, since Russia attacked Georgia. So it's not like it's impossible, but it's also not normal. I mean, not abnormal, right? So, and there's no reason why we couldn't say that publicly or that we couldn't use regular channels. So he went there to deliver a message in person about something super important. There's no question about that. Not something that is, as Trump said, semi-routine. This is not a semi-routine process at all. In fact, it's extraordinarily unusual. So my guess as to what it could be that important is, now some things are gonna happen next. The most important thing is that Russia not join a war against us, because then the world blows up. So do not join a war against us. So, well, what could be a war against us? Because we're not joining the Ukraine-Russia war, we're financing Ukraine, but we're not physically in it. That makes a huge difference because we're both nuclear-armed countries and we don't want to face off against Russia. That risks the entire planet, right? There was one thing that happened recently that would actually put us in a war together. Ukraine hit an Iranian ship. And if the war broadened and Ukraine is fighting against Iran, and then drags Russia into fighting with Iran, well, we're fighting against Iran, then all of a sudden the battle would be joined and Russia would be against the United States. And that is super duper dangerous. There's a second thing that was announced just recently, which is if anyone is working with Iran, we're going to do sanctions on them. And the sanctions are not normal sanctions. We're gonna take you off the dollar. Now, if we take you off the dollar, that's a thermonuclear economic threat and puts us into a conflict of sorts with folks. Now, that doesn't necessarily lead to a war, but if we're gonna do that, certainly Russia will view that as a very hostile act. So I could understand why a president would send someone to talk to the Russians now. Now, look, guys, we're gonna do these things that might bring us into conflict. Let's avoid that conflict. So let us do whatever we're gonna do against Iran, et cetera. And whatever happens with Ukraine is maybe your business, right? But let's, by the way, if they're doing that to make sure that we avoid a conflict with Russia, that's not a bad thing, that's a good precaution. So in a sense, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that it's a trip that's meant to avoid something bigger and worse for America. And Anna, we also know that our foreign policy is, well, I think it's 100% controlled by Israel. So if that's the case, they're not going to talk about something that isn't related to Israel. And Israel's the one that's basically trying to get the whole world into some massive worldwide conflict, talking about attacking Turkey. Could that have ramifications for Russia, who's right next door? So something to tell the Russians, when we do X, do not counter it and do not join the war. By the way, now this is getting further out there, and I hope to God this isn't anywhere near what was discussed, but a couple of times now the Israelis and Israeli supporters in American media have started to talk about nukes. So if anyone uses a nuke, then the Russians would certainly be on a red alert. And by the way, if you were to nuke Iran or Turkey, they're both right next to Russia, and the radiation could go over to Russia, and they are allies with Iran. So if you were worried about Russia retaliating on the most important issue of nuclear, you would do something extraordinary like send your CIA chief on a secret mission to say, let's not nuke each other. So those are your options. What is not an option is, it's a regular routine checkup with the Russians about a thing that we've already been talking about for a decade.
Right, and obviously we're just speculating here because we don't have much to go off of, and I certainly don't trust either government to tell us the truth about what the discussions were really about. For instance, Dmitry Peskov, the spokesman for the Kremlin, said a lot of this kind of scare story material, the claim that Russia is making preparations to potentially strike a NATO ally of ours a few years from now, is being published right now. Of course, it has nothing to do with reality and nothing to do with the intentions of the Russian Federation. But although he provided very little clarity on what they did discuss, the head of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service said that he held a working level meeting with Ratcliffe to discuss unspecified and sensitive matters falling within the remit of their respective intelligence services. So I like your theory a lot, Cenk, and I think I would put more weight behind it if I was more optimistic as you, but I'm not as optimistic as you. What you just detailed in your theory is something that would require a government that actually is a little more forward thinking, that's making preparations to kind of minimize the type of devastating destruction and damage that would be done to our country or the world through the types of military action that you were describing. I just don't see this administration as the type of administration that prepares for anything, really. They seem to shoot from the hip. So the idea that Ratcliffe traveled to Moscow specifically to warn against doing certain things in retaliation or in response to our actions in the Middle East, I just find it hard to believe. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic.
And so, Anna, two things about that. Number one, if you're gonna send your CIA chief to have this kind of extraordinary conversation, that's why I mentioned what I mentioned at the end. The thing that's most likely to have that spark that conversation is the potential for nukes. That's the number one reason why you would want to have a super secret meeting between the intelligence agencies. Now let's hope that I'm wrong, and obviously that's speculation. I have no idea what they discussed internally. I wasn't in the room, and neither was anybody else. But that leads to my second point, which is, here's what the intelligence of the Russians and the Americans are not going to do. Tell the press what they actually talked about. So whatever reason they gave publicly is definitely not the correct one. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had a super secret meeting in person between the two heads of their intelligence groups. They're not going to tell you what they actually met about. There's a 0% chance of that.
The other thing I want to just note, on the topic of Russia potentially attacking a NATO ally of ours, I would just ask kindly, nicely. I know people are going to be up in arms about this, but I would just say that NATO allies need to stop provoking Russia. And I genuinely do mean that. What do I mean by that? Okay, stop talking about balkanizing Russia. Stop talking about weakening Russia and breaking it up into 5 parts. Please stop doing that. That is not making the situation better for you. I get that you guys hate Russia. You can hate Russia all you want, that's fine. But when you are having conferences and you're making public statements about balkanizing Russia, what do you think Russia is gonna do in response to that? They're gonna see that as a security threat, and they're gonna carry out the types of actions that they've carried out against Ukraine. And I would like to prevent that from happening. So maybe ease up on the overextending Russia talk, because I don't think it's helpful if you're actually trying to, create an environment of world peace.
Yeah, and so look, guys, it doesn't mean you're soft on Russia. It doesn't mean you want them to invade countries or that you're going to prevent them from invading countries. But you don't need to provoke a war for no reason, right? So we want to try to make sure we don't get into any further conflict with Russia. And so the better way to do that is to not antagonize them. If I thought that it reeked of weakness, I would say so, and I've said so in the past. No, at this point, we've done a lot of war. Nobody thinks we're weak or unwilling to get into stupid wars for almost no reason and to stay in them for decades on end. Believe me, that's unfortunately our reputation. So we don't have to protect that reputation. Everybody knows, right? Look, I want to go to graphic 10 here because I want to give you guys a sense of another thing that triggered for me why this might have something to do with something that isn't just Russia and Ukraine. Zelensky put out a statement saying, "I received warm congratulations to the people of Ukraine from Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. Our countries share deep bonds between our people, between our people in the first place, but also in the economy, culture, and other areas. It is therefore good to hear of Israel's desire to strengthen these existing ties. We count on working fruitfully together to bring about more security." And Netanyahu wrote him a letter, and that's what he's responding to. It was very warm. Netanyahu doesn't write a letter to the president of Ukraine for no reason. He does it because it involves some sort of strategy related to Israel where they're going to create more war. And by the way, that's not in dispute because Ukraine did bomb an Iranian ship out of nowhere to try to merge the two wars, which would again be basically a world war. And if I thought there was going to be a world war, I'd send my CIA chief to talk to the head of intelligence for Russia as well.
I just think that everything that's transpiring right now, the way things are developing for the West in particular, is so short-sighted, so dumb, especially when you consider where the United States is at right now when it comes to its Patriot missile interceptors. We have depleted them, yet we're still engaging in provocative acts, we along with our allies, that would indicate that we're putting ourselves at risk. If we don't have enough missile interceptors to carry out a war against Iran, what makes anyone think that we would have the missile interceptors necessary to provide protection to Ukraine, provide protection for ourselves here in the United States, considering the fact that we're making enemies left and right on the international stage through our support for genocide and the barbarism that Israel carries out in the Middle East? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I don't understand what the end game is here. Like, what is the goal? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to get ourselves killed? Are we trying to get the civilians living in these allied NATO countries killed? Why? What's up with all the provocative actions? Why is Ukraine getting involved in our war against Iran? It's just so utterly stupid. And rather than maybe taking a beat, taking a look at the situation we're in right now and figuring out how to, unravel, like get out of this, we're doing the opposite. It's insane. It's totally insane.
Yeah, the only scenario that I can think of that's extreme enough to warrant this kind of trip is and you're making a good point about our interceptor missiles. Since we're running so low on them, it's possible that we just can't defend Europe conventionally in the way that we used to be able to. So that might mean that we went over to deliver a threat, because the Russians know we're running out of interceptor missiles, and well, now everybody knows because it's all over the press. But that might embolden them, and maybe you go there to deliver a threat. You better not go into Europe. If you go into Europe, we're going to do something worse than interceptor missiles. But whatever that conversation was, it was super important about really dangerous things.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, you're not winning friends. You're not making allies by putting out love letters to a guy who's wanted. He's a fugitive of the ICC, okay? Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal who is wanted by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. And here you have Volodymyr Zelensky putting out a love letter to him on social media. Like, what are you doing? And by the way, you want the the territory of Ukraine to be respected. What about the territories that belong to the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank? That doesn't matter to you, right? You're willing to make an alliance with a literal war criminal who has carried out genocide in Gaza and is aiding and abetting the slaughter and displacement of Palestinians in the West Bank.
And by the way,
it doesn't make any sense.
Let's think that through for a second. So on one thing is, I'll agree with Anna, like if you want our money so that you could do an alliance with a maniacal genocidal government, no, thank you. No, that's like to us saying like, oh, in the middle of the the Bosnian genocide, oh, I'd like to make an alliance with the Serbs who are slaughtering people as we speak. Well, that makes me not want to do an alliance with you, right? That's weird. Second of all, why are you reaching out to a government that is so deeply unpopular in America? 2/3 of Americans now disapprove of Israel, borderline hate them, and you think it's a good political idea to get Israel on your side so that America will help you more. Oh, right, you would only do that if you know what we're saying on this show, including in this segment, which is that it doesn't matter how much Americans don't like Israel or don't approve of Israel, our government works for Israel. So that's why he's going to basically our dad and going, hey, tell your son America, or tell your servant America to do X, Y, or Z. That is and by the way, it's not just about America. The rest of the world now hates Israel. They have almost no allies other than the puppet dictators in the Middle East that report to them. Outside of that, the whole world is turned on them. So how could it possibly help Ukraine unless you knew for a fact that Israel controls American foreign policy? So that's why you had to make an alliance with Israel so that America will stay in the war longer for you.
Right, and there are all sorts of foreign policy analysts who believe that Ukraine intentionally struck that Iranian vessel in the Caspian Sea in order to inject itself in the war so they can get their hands on weaponry they need and interceptors. The problem is, and I don't know why world leaders are having a hard time understanding this. I'm not an expert, but I understand it because I listen to the experts. You don't just snap your fingers and boom, missile interceptors appear. It takes years to build them. Okay, so Zelensky says he needs 300. We don't have 300 to give him, not even close. And it's gonna take years to build them. So intensifying war, injecting yourself into another war because you think it's gonna work out well for the Ukrainian people is just so unhinged and so stupid, but here we are.
But Anna, to be fair to Zelensky, if he thinks the same thing we think, it's not necessarily stupid. He's going to what he perceives to be the most powerful force on earth. That if you want America to do something, you ask Israel to do it. And then you do them a favor. That's why he taxed the Iranian ship to do Israel a favor so that he could beseech Israel to get them to order us to help Ukraine. That's kind of logical because they are our boss and Zelensky sees the same thing we see.
It would be logical under normal circumstances, but we are not experiencing normal circumstances. We have depleted our interceptors and we are running out of missiles. It's stupid. The whole thing is stupid. You have to factor everything in. And I don't think he is. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, well, anyway. The thing we 100% agree on is wrap up the war. That's the smartest way to go. Stop getting everyone killed and get to a peace deal already.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about a pretty unhinged interview on Tucker Carlson's podcast. I'll tell you all about it when we return.
All right, guys, so let's go to members on tyt.com. I'm reading these blind. ETIB2 says, Trump is ready to sell Ukraine out. That's maybe a possibility, but hard to connect that trip with that because then why would we tell the Russians ahead of time? But maybe, but I'll think about it. I like that we're all trying to figure it out because it definitely isn't the official story. Don Dada Dragon says, my guess is that Trump wants Russia to turn their back against Iran. That's certainly a part of it. That's probably not enough, but definitely a part of it. Winston Smith too says Russia is stretched thinner than we are. China, on the other hand, is stronger than ever. You know why? That's a great point, Winston. And because China's smart, so they're like, I see Russia wasting all of their military, their resources on this stupid war that they barely got anything out of, if anything. I see America wasting all their resources and all of their military in this stupid war that they don't even have any interest in. Oh, I got an idea. Why don't I not get into a stupid war? That way I'll get to keep all my resources while my competitors drain themselves like idiots. That's exactly what they're doing. Kiriakou Stars says Russia's right to protect their borders from NATO. Israel's the problem. Ukraine attacked Iran under instruction from the UK and Israel. Again, nearly indisputable. Remote Dragon says, but Jake Tapper knows, he has to write a book about it. Winston writes back in, what are the chances that NATO will muster a military response? I put it at 0.0%. Well, if Russia attacks, well, if they attack Estonia, maybe not. They attack Germany, that's a different question, or Poland. But these are the insane times we're in that we're beginning to have those conversations. A giant world war potential thanks to Russia and Israel. Oh, great, so happy. We'll be back.
Got that bet all day long.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Let me just do you guys a quick favor, and I really think it is based on what you guys are writing back to us. Everybody who switches over to Noble Mobile goes, oh, you were right. Nothing on my phone changed. The service is great. It's a T-Mobile 5G system, and I've saved tons of money. So tyt.com/switch. Their offer now is first month's only $10. Jump on it, save more money. Every month you're on there, you're gonna save more and more. You never pay above $50, usually in the 30s. You get money back if you don't use your data. Absolutely no reason not to switch over. tyt.com/switch. Save yourself a ton of money, tyt.com/switch. All right, let's go to our next story.
State of illegal immigration, one word comes to mind, that's catastrophe. Right now in the United States, I've got the number at 107 million illegal aliens currently residing with impunity, I might add, in the United States today.
107 million?
107 million, 1/4 of the population. We've got 330,000 approximately American citizens, add another 107 million onto that.
107 million illegal?
Illegal.
Yeah, that's not true. Okay, so that was former Border Patrol Commander at Large Greg Bovino saying ludicrous and outrageous things on Tucker Carlson's show. Did he push back? It'll be interesting. Are we gonna push back? So you're gonna get to see all that in a second. But Bovino also thinks that the Trump administration is trying to murder him. Wait, what? Anna, tell us about this.
This was one of the more unhinged guests on Tucker Carlson's podcast, I will say that. And Greg Bovino has posted on X following the publishing of this interview, just to say that he spent 30 years on the front lines. This real number is over 107 million illegal aliens in the United States. Now, even the most hawkish, anti-immigration individuals in this country have never cited a number like that. I think the highest number I've ever heard anyone say is 50 million. I will say that, the claim that we have 11 million undocumented immigrants in the country, and that number hasn't changed in a very, very long time. So I would not be surprised if it's actually higher than 11 million. But I don't think that it's 107 million. I'd have to see at least some evidence of that. And of course, he didn't provide any. Now, it is critical to note that Bovino is literally the only hawk that has claimed that number. But the main point Bovino wanted to make throughout this interview was that the Trump administration has completely wiped its hands of immigration enforcement. They're not enforcing immigration laws at all in the interior of the country. That was the main claim that he was trying to make. And I want you to see more of what he had to say. Take a look.
I don't give them much credit for doing anything immigration related because they're doing nothing. But talking about a gatekeeper, in other words, someone that can control that information flow to the big man, They do one hell of a job.
They're doing nothing really for immigration enforcement inside the United States.
No, it's some targeted enforcement. You hear an operation here, an operation there. There was one in Maryland. I think they had 1,200 arrests last week, something like that. What that is we're gonna do an operation, splash that across the headlines, and gaslight America into thinking that's what we do every single day all across the United States, when nothing could be further from the truth. Walk out on the street and look. Walk out on the street. Walk to a Home Depot and take a look at what's in the parking lot at Home Depot. Does it look like there's mass deportations and interior enforcement occurring? Absolutely not, because let me tell you, the illegal aliens sure aren't scared right now.
Damn, what Home Depot are you going to? Because I needed a day laborer the other day. Could not find one at Home Depot, I'll tell you that. But anyway, putting that aside, here's what the reality is. Okay, he mentions, there was like 1,200 arrests last week. No, the numbers are actually much, much higher. In fact, the New York Times just put out a detailed report looking at government data on immigration arrests. And I want to give you what the data actually indicates. Overall immigration arrests rose to record highs with 43,000 ICE arrests in June. That would mean that it would be more than just 1,200 arrests per week. But okay, 43,000 ICE arrests in June, and 49,000 in July. 2 fatal shootings involving immigration and customs enforcement agents in Texas and Maine drew outrage, but did not meaningfully slow the pace of arrests. Now, that last part is important because one of the other points that Bovino made in this conversation was that following the fatal shootings of American citizens like Renee Good in Minnesota, well, after that, the Trump administration completely pulled back. They're not doing anything about immigration anymore, which just isn't true. There's more. After his confirmation this spring, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Markwayne Mullin, promised quieter but more effective enforcement. ICE now appears closer than ever to meeting a recent goal of 2,000 daily arrests. So again, going back to what Bovino said, he's like, I think there was like 1,200 arrests last week. No. They're doing 2,000, nearly 2,000 daily arrests, which again pours cold water on the claim that he's making here. There are record immigration arrests in nearly every single state. But as the Times notes, the surge in immigration arrests took place in 2 states, Florida and Texas, mainly because these are 2 states who are favorable toward the Trump administration's policy of mass deportation. So they're willing to work with the feds in order to make it happen. But even the states that are not willing to cooperate, you're starting to see record numbers of immigration arrests. ICE is making more than 380 arrests a day in Texas and more than 230 a day in Florida, with each state up by more than 100 arrests a day from the spring. So contrary to what Bovino claimed, ICE is actually accelerating the number of immigration arrests per day. And on that point regarding state and local cooperation with immigration agents, ICE has rapidly expanded a program to deputize local police officers to arrest immigrants. The share of people detained through the program, known as 287G, is now around 14%, data shows. The program has been particularly important in smaller states like Wyoming and West Virginia, where ICE's presence is more limited. The share of 287G arrests in both states is now more than 50%. So they're using different tactics. They're deploying state and local law enforcement to help them where, state and local law enforcement is willing. And then the report notes that there was a surge in immigration arrests this summer, including the detainment of individuals who had never committed a crime outside of being in the country with an undocumented status. That includes people who entered the country, by the way, legally with a valid asylum claim. So these are individuals who weren't even in the country illegally. Individuals who had been granted temporary legal status. A majority of the immigrants arrested in July were actually people who were accused of violating civil immigration laws, but who had not been charged or convicted of any other crime. And the share with a past violent criminal conviction fell to less than 4%. So it kind of gives you a profile on the types of people who are being targeted and arrested for possible deportation.
Yeah, so let me address some of the other things he said. He said, oh, the illegal aliens aren't even scared. No, people were pretty freaked out when you started murdering people in the streets with your masked thugs. So if you wanted to scare people because that's, you get a kick out of it, well, unfortunately, mission accomplished. And then he said the Trump administration is doing nothing about undocumented immigrants right now. That's absurd. They're doing so much and way too much through Bovino, and that's why he was moved out, that the American people are totally turned against Trump on immigration. Remember, Trump, in the beginning of his term, was actually very popular on the issue of immigration. Whether you like it or not, his numbers were excellent in that category. Now he's way below water. Why? Because they did too much, not too little. It's not like people are like, oh my God, you didn't do enough mass deportations. You didn't murder enough American citizens in the streets while you were doing this weirdo fake Rambo stuff that you're doing. So it's just totally detached from reality. And if you notice he said, oh, they're just doing targeted enforcement. So what would you like them to do? Untargeted enforcement? Which is kind of true. That is what he wants. And in fact, one of our members made a good point here. Remote Dragon, he's a member on tyt.com. You could be too and be part of the show, tyt.com/join. Wrote in, LOL, he means all non-white people are illegal. All these races are the same. Now, put aside the charge of racism. We could have a debate about that, etc. But the point there is, wait a minute, 107 million people. Yeah, he might be referring to literally every non-white person in the country. That's about the right number, I think. So does he just think?
Can we just, hold on, let's just stop for a second. Can we just really take in the absurdity of 107 million undocumented immigrants in the country, okay? What is our population? 330 million?
Yeah, and by the way, which is-
please process that, process the absurdity of that. Tucker, you should have pushed back on that, please. Like, what was that? That was insane.
No, it was, look, so first the numbers, then Tucker. So remember, 330 million and about 70% are white, right? So what does that leave? It leaves around 100 million, 107 million. So what you want to call racist, you don't want to call racist, that's up to you. But it appears he's referring to literally every non-white person in the country, based on the numbers. If you don't think that's insane, then you're insane. Like, sorry, but those are just numbers and empirical reality. So, all right, and now to Tucker. Look, Tucker and we don't agree on immigration. There's certain things we agree on that, but they're so elementary. Close the border. Yeah, if you're committed terrible crimes while you're here, of course you gotta go, right? Those are all obvious, right? But beyond that, we have very different point of view on immigration, I think. But here's what I do know, we're not in favor of mass deportations. Good news, neither are the American people. So like, if Tucker wants to say, hey, I love mass deportations, and Greg Bovino is obviously in favor of mass, doesn't do it justice, that level of deportation, right? Okay, fine, that's your political opinion and we disagree and there's no problem with that. And we could debate over that, we could fight over that. But when the brother is saying outrageous lies and you don't push back on it, it makes it sound like you agree with them and your audience winds up thinking there's 107 million undocumented immigrants. Why do we give Tucker credit on the stuff that he does push back on? Hey, we shouldn't have war, and when we go to war, that isn't peace, it is war, right? Because he's telling his audience things that we agree with and that are correct. Trump said there wouldn't be wars, and now he's committed us to these disastrous, endless wars in the Middle East. Good, correct. 107 million undocumented immigrants, not anywhere near correct, bad. And wrong to get your audience to believe that, or have let this guy basically deceive your audience into believing that. So of course he should have pushed back on that much, much harder.
And in fact, we can't reach a place of truth and honesty about what the situation actually is and what it really looks like, then we can't actually have real solutions to it. And unfortunately, this is the type of policy issue that gets hijacked by extremes on both sides. And those two extremes don't represent the majority of the American people. The reason why Trump came in with such a high approval on immigration which, he did say that he was going to do mass deportations and all of that, is because Biden did lose control of the border. There was a migrant crisis. The whatever you want to call them on the left totally wanted to deny it in order to provide cover for Biden. That made people furious and angry, especially if they lived in a community that was impacted by the migrant crisis. So what they did is they created an opening for the other extreme to come in, because you have Americans who are like, can someone please do something about this? I'm being ignored. And this is an issue in my community that I want addressed. So they give Trump a chance, and then Trump comes in. Of course, he's on the other extreme. He deploys these masked ICE agents who refuse to identify themselves. American citizens get shot and killed. And then, oh wow, what a shocker. All of a sudden, Trump is underwater on the issue of immigration. And then what ends up getting solved? Nothing. And that's the issue that I have with the immigration debate, because I think that there are good points being made by individuals who say, hey, you know what? We do need to control our borders. We do need to know who's coming into the country. Just allowing this flow of migrants to come in is doing a huge favor to the wealthy corporate donors that fund our politicians, because they want to exploit cheap labor that will have no recourse if they're being abused or exploited at the workplace. There's no question that's going on. So I do want solutions, but I want to find solutions that come from a place of humanity and looking out for the American people. And right now, I'm not seeing that. That's the problem.
Yeah. So look, if he said there's 11 million undocumented immigrants and we hate it and we want to rout out every one of them, no matter how much money it costs, no matter how much violence it takes, no matter how many people get killed, including American citizens, okay, let's have an honest debate about that. But if you're gonna say, oh, every non-white person in the country is here illegally and we should remove them all, and that's normal, okay, there's nothing to debate there. That's not true and it's stupid. So, and look, and Anna, to your point, the American people were very clear in the polling that they did not like the way that Joe Biden and the Democrats handled the border in Biden's term. And you can say, well, I don't like that the American people thought that. Okay, that's fine, you don't like it, but the American people did clearly think that. And then of course it had the effect of getting Trump back into office. And now American people are saying we hate mass deportations. Over 2/3 saying we don't want it, okay? You can say, well, I don't like that American people think that. Okay, that's your business, but they do think that. So if you keep insisting on mass deportations and these outrageous claims and having mass thugs in our streets that are armed and killing American citizens, you're gonna be super unpopular. So, okay. Yeah. If you're okay with that, no problem. But don't live in a fantasy world where you think that the majority of Americans want that. No, the overwhelming majority of Americans definitely do not want that. And by the way, that's why Bovino was moved out, because even Trump realized, and even people like Stephen Miller realized, the great majority of Americans do not want mass deportations. That's why they backed away from it.
I mean, even Tom Homan, who is not some dove on immigration, that's for sure, was critical of Bovino because he saw Bovino as a hindrance to the deportations that he wanted to carry out, because public opinion had shifted against the Trump administration on their immigration policy, thanks to the actions that were played out on our streets with the masked ICE agents. Anyway, so if that part of the conversation wasn't enough to make you think there's something off about Bovino, get a load of what he says next.
The minute I left, security detail gets pulled. I'm one of the highest, if not the highest threats in DHS, death threats. I mean, you name it, man, they're coming. Hey, take that guy to security detail. We're gonna shut that guy up. Do I think they want me dead at this point? Yes, I'm in a running battle every time I go out. I mean, every time the citizens of my own community are like, what is going on with you? These people come, there's some crazies out there. You know this, Tucker. And you bet, do I think they want me killed? Absolutely.
So you heard that correctly. Bovino is under the impression that the Trump administration wants to have him killed. Look, I'm gonna toss it over to you, Cenk. What do you? I mean, maybe, no. I don't know, but like maybe not. Like, why? Like, no one's. I doubt anyone in the Trump administration is even thinking about Greg Bovino right now.
No, why would they want him killed? That doesn't make any sense. I can't figure out any reason why that would help the Trump administration. So, and by the way, now context matters. That's why you have to have analysis that gives you the full context. The Trump team pulls people's security on a regular basis after they leave the government. They do it to Democrats, they even do it to Republicans like Bovino. And so I don't know if it's like a personal idiosyncrasy of Donald Trump, but he's like, no, I don't want them protected. I only want me protected, right? So it's not unusual at all. If it was unusual, we'd tell you. So, and then number two, Anna, this is a thing that I want people to absorb. Bovino was always this crazy. When he was interviewing for one job after another, as he moved up the ranks, I'm sure that he told his crazy opinions to the people he was talking to because he doesn't think they're crazy. He's stating them like they're perfectly normal. So despite the fact that this brother's been crazy the entire time, he kept getting promoted until he was in charge. That is crazy. My God, what other lunatics are running super important parts of our government?
I know, I hate our government. And it's not just, it's the Trump administration she hates. No, I hate the government. I think the government is too bureaucratic. I do believe that there's a deep state. I don't think they have our best interests in mind. And our country has been falling apart for decades now. And I'm worried that we're getting close to the end, okay? It's just been a complete and utter disaster here. And I do think that it's due to people like Bovino getting promoted, but he's just a small part of the problem. It's just a big issue of incompetency that we're seeing time and time again with various members of the federal government, in some cases state and local government as well. But look, you got to push back on a number like 107 million undocumented immigrants. And if you don't, then you lose credibility on other matters, and you shouldn't lose credibility because Tucker's great on the issue of Israel and the Iran war. But on this, you got to push back the way that you would on Ted Cruz. But I think, our biases do play a role in the way we react to certain information. And Tucker is hawkish on immigration. So I think he just kind of let it slide. And that's not good.
Yeah, but anyway, the brother's crazy in 18 different ways. And by the way, and so hence, it's not like even if he hadn't said those things and Tucker pushed back, whatever, we don't agree with Tucker. At least I'll speak for myself. I don't agree with Tucker on a lot of the immigration issues. So I'm not surprised by that. I guess what I'm saying is, like, we can agree on things and disagree on things. We've said that a million times, right? But there's a different level when you let someone obviously lie to your audience. And so so obviously what we're saying was we wish that hadn't happened, obviously. And last thing is, guys, it's not like the Trump people didn't know how crazy Bovino was. They wanted to try what Bovino is saying. They did try it. And then when the polling dropped, they realized, we can't make this work. It's not sustainable. The American people have turned on us on it and they don't want it. That's why they turned around. If the American people did not make that clear, Bovino would still be in charge and they'd be doing his plan.
Yep. All right, well, when we come back from the break, we'll talk a little bit about a banking executive's hearing with the House Oversight Committee in regard to his ties with Jeffrey Epstein. We have learned some things, and you do not want to miss this upcoming segment. I'll see you in just a bit.
Tucker Carlson, a terrible friend.
I love white people!
All right, back. Let's go to Super Chat 0083 says, this orange buffoon has completely compromised our entire defense posture with this folly. Well, that is certainly true in 18 different ways, and now I'm worried about the next level of it, as you are. Kushrinda says, US always omits vital info regarding what's been done to Gaza, Russia, and Iran by our allies to propagandize their victimhood. Imagine the US body count if Iran/Russia were as heartless as us /Israel. I mean, there's a very good point in there. I mean, if Russia killed civilians at the rate that Israel does and bombs civilian infrastructure at the rate that Israel does, Kiev would right now, 90% of the buildings would be destroyed. There'd be hundreds of thousands killed. So no, it's not in terms of who's more evil in how they conduct warfare, not close. Israel has a worse civilian kill ratio than any terrorist group, let alone any country in the world. So thank God the Russians aren't as evil as the Israelis. And that's not to say they're not evil and they haven't done terrible things, but man, if they did it at Israel's scale, we'd be way worse off. So that's a terrific point. James Kelly says, I don't know why, but I just feel like we're being set up for something. Just saying we are destroying our economy, our military, and our alliances almost on purpose. But I mean, I think Trump is such a moron that he would destroy all those things accidentally. He's like a kid smashing all his toys at once. Simon Moody says, Putin has been very clear. He does not consider Ukraine to be a valid country, just like Israel sees a Palestinian state. That's a really good point too. Turtle Power says, yeah, Netanyahu and Putin wanted in The Hague. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. A lot to get to, including this doozy of a story next, so let's get started. A former banking executive and close associate of Jeffrey Epstein has confirmed that the late child trafficker helped him meet with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That's of course after he met with Snow White. And who was that and what did they do? Well, you're gonna find out in this amazing story.
Well, Cenk, I will start this story off by noting that this investigation shouldn't be carried out by the House Oversight Committee. It should be carried out by federal prosecutors. But for some reason, federal prosecutors refuse to investigate this. So we're left with, closed door testimony featuring these people who had pretty close relationships with Epstein. Now, whether or not anything is going to happen as a result of these hearings, I don't know. But the Epstein associate that we are discussing here is the former JP Morgan Chase executive, Jes Staley, who just testified before the House Oversight Committee. Now, Staley's relationship with Epstein began in 2000. And it turns out that the two were much closer than most realize. Staley called his friendship with Epstein profound, and Epstein called him family. Family. Okay. So we already suspected that Epstein connected Benjamin Netanyahu to Jes Staley back in 2011, thanks to some reporting in the Daily Beast earlier. I'll give you the relevant excerpts where they write that in March of 2011, one JP Morgan employee wrote to JP Morgan executive Jes Staley and another high-level executive, against all odds, we have been granted a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Staley forwarded the message to Epstein and wrote, thanks, to which the convicted sex offender replied, surprise, surprise. Okay, now while under questioning from the House Oversight Committee, Staley confirmed that Epstein was in fact the individual who facilitated that meeting. Because Epstein was very likely working for the Israelis, but we'll put that aside for now. The topic came.
Sorry, Anna,
let me just get through the. Okay, go ahead.
Just jump in on that point real quick. He says, surprise, surprise, sarcastically, meaning like, of course I could set up a meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu because he's working directly with him. It's in the emails, but our media still says he has no connections to Israel. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. Our media is like working against us by literally misinforming us about the relationship that Epstein had with Israel, with Netanyahu. But anyway, again, putting that aside, let's get to what Staley said during this House Oversight Committee hearing. So Jes Staley said, I met with the sheikh who ran the ports for Dubai, and then he had connections in Israel, and I met with senior officials in Israel that Epstein knew. Representative Anna Paulina Luna responded with, who did you meet? Staley responds with, I met Ehud Barak and I met the Prime Minister Netanyahu. Okay, fascinating. So Luna didn't press any further, but thankfully someone else did. So here is the back and forth between Staley and Senior Counsel for Investigations, Ellison Tolan. We've removed the irrelevant excerpts that are part of this exchange, so I just want to give you that note. Totally irrelevant parts that we took out. Here is the relevant part. So Ellison Tolan says, have you met Benjamin Netanyahu? Jes Staley says once. Tolan responds, where was this? Staley says, in the prime minister's office in Israel. Okay, so at that point, you have Tolan asking, did Mr. Epstein facilitate the meeting? And Jes Staley confirms, yes, he did. Okay, so Tolan asks, why? At this point, Staley says, I asked him to. He knew that I was trying to meet with the prime minister and I was having difficulty getting on his calendar. And I mentioned that to Epstein, and then I met with the prime minister. So Staley refused to define Epstein's relationship to Netanyahu other than stating, I just think he knew him. Tolan asks, why would you ask Mr. Epstein to help you get on his calendar? Staley says, I think he had relationships with individuals in Israel. He knew Ehud Barak well. And I think he may have mentioned that he knew Benjamin Netanyahu. So I asked if he could help get me a meeting. So Staley told the House Oversight Committee that he wanted to meet with Netanyahu on official business with JP Morgan Chase. Tolan says, what did you discuss at the meeting? Staley says, I just think we talked about the Middle East and geopolitics, nothing specific. All right, I'm gonna pause right there just briefly, Cenk. I think we discussed geopolitics, nothing specific. Is anyone buying that?
Yeah.
I'm not buying that.
So look, this guy's a banker and there's a ton of money here, but Netanyahu still didn't meet with him until Epstein makes one call and instantly he gets a meeting with Netanyahu. So, and as we showed you with the drop site news stories, every deal that Epstein made internationally was for the benefit of Israel. He would procure cyber weapons for them. He would make deals with them for Russia, Mongolia, and all sorts of countries all across the world. And if you couldn't get a meeting with Netanyahu, that's okay, you call Epstein. And Epstein is so ingrained in the Israeli government that he can get you a meeting just like that. And then when you email him, hey, thanks, he goes, yeah, surprise, surprise. Yeah, if you're in the Israeli government at a very high level, then you could immediately get meetings with Netanyahu for anyone you like. And that's why you sarcastically say, surprise, surprise. I told you. And so this is overwhelming evidence that Epstein worked with the Israelis. And yet the media will tell you going forward that he didn't, and that's some sort of anti-Semitic conspiracy theory or something. They generally just don't even bother addressing it, Anna, because they know that if they talk about it, everyone will realize it's super obvious that Epstein worked with Israel, and they don't want anyone finding out. But if they do talk about it, they'll call it a conspiracy theory 100%, like the conspiracy theory that he was killed in prison and didn't hang himself.
Yeah, the second something is labeled a conspiracy theory now, I immediately want to investigate it to see how accurate it is. Okay, instead of immediately brushing it off like I used to, like a moron, now I actually investigate it to see if there's any credibility to the claim. Because let me tell you something, a lot of those crazy kooky conspiracy theorists ended up being right about a lot of things. But let me get back to the exchange between Staley and Tolan, because at that point in the conversation, Tolan asks, why was he also interested in meeting with you, meaning Netanyahu? Staley says, this is 2011. Tolan says, Staley responds with, I was a senior executive of JP Morgan. JP Morgan had a lot of business in the Middle East. Tolan asks, so you were meeting with him on behalf of JP Morgan? And at that point, Staley says, yes. And look, we should note that according to the New York Times, Epstein met with Netanyahu in Israel during the late 1980s. And so he definitely did have a relationship with Netanyahu. Staley knew that, and Staley tapped Epstein to get onto Netanyahu's calendar. That much is true. I don't believe Staley in the vague statements he's making about the conversation he had with Netanyahu. I think he knows exactly what they discussed, and I don't think he's being forthright about what they actually talked about. But nonetheless, this country's most powerful people are disgusting, okay, are disgusting. And if you don't believe me yet, wait till you hear the rest of what he testified on.
Yeah, Snow White's coming up next. But real quick on this, why did Epstein get involved with the Israelis and Netanyahu back in the 1980s? Well, we know, again, through the drop site news articles that he was involved in the Iran-Contra affair, and Mossad helped clean the planes that the CIA was using to bring in drugs. What it means to clean them is like money laundering. They were sold to the guy who owns Victoria's Secrets, who Epstein was connected to and running his money. So Epstein is in the middle of a deal with Mossad and the CIA during Iran-Contra in the 1980s. I mean, it doesn't get any more connected to the Israeli government than that.
It's nuts, it's nuts. All right, well, let me reset for the Snow White angle because it's pretty amazing. So, former JP Morgan Chase executive Jes Staley recently testified before the House Oversight Committee in regard to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And the topic of someone described as Snow White came up, which I think is really important to focus on when it comes to his testimony. So Staley was questioned about this haunting exchange that was revealed in the Epstein files. I'm gonna read you the relevant excerpt. "That was fun. Say hi to Snow White," Staley wrote in a July 2010 email. Epstein responded, "What character would you like next?" And Staley replied, "Beauty and the Beast." So the day after that email exchange took place, an individual whose name is redacted in the Epstein files wrote to Epstein and told him that the woman with the name or the moniker Snow White had sex twice that day, okay? Now, lawmakers stated that when they viewed the unredacted Epstein files, they found evidence that Epstein directed the same woman to purchase a Snow White costume. Okay, now while under questioning, Staley stated that he did not have sex with that woman. Okay, I totally believe him. However, Staley did admit that he did have sex with an assistant of Epstein's in 2010. He said, quote, I had an encounter once with someone who was on Epstein's staff, but was a mature woman, he told the committee. He said the woman invited him to her apartment and he believed it was consensual. The woman subsequently sued Epstein for sexual abuse and settled with his estate. So that's not good. That's not good at all. And I'm wondering if there are tapes of Staley, who knows? But Staley confirmed that by 2011, JP Morgan Chase had suspected that Epstein was committing human trafficking. But he denied that JP Morgan Chase retained him as a client anyway because of their friendly relationship.
Yeah. So first of all, he's going to deny everything that you can't prove 100%. He's only going to admit to things that everybody already knows. So that's why he admits to the relationship with a woman that was not underage, connected by Epstein, because everybody already knows about that and she's sued, etc. So that's an easy admission for him. Snow White, we don't know what her age was, but he says maybe he ran into her at a party and that's why they were emailing about it. You ran into her at a party, interesting, what kind of party was it? And you had enough of a conversation with her that the next time you guys role played, you wanted to be Beauty and the Beast?
Ugh.
Come on. Okay, so if you believe that he wasn't with whoever Snow White is, okay, I mean, I guess you'll believe anything, or you're a national media reporter. So, of course not.
I should know one more point, because it's relevant. Staley did confess that he visited Epstein's island 3 times and visited Epstein's townhouse dozens of times.
But always really, just for costume parties, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and never to do the thing that Epstein's famous for. Actually, he did do it once, but he'll only admit to the one time he did it with someone who was overage. I mean, I don't know how many times he did it with anybody who was under or overaged, but I do know he went there many times. And people usually went there for what? We know what for what, but he claims, oh no, I only did it that one legal time. And all the role playing I did with everyone else, was just at a party. Yeah, okay, all right, if you believe that. Now, guys, why would it matter if he was with Snow White, if Snow White was underage and they're doing these weirdo games, right? Well, it would matter because then if Jeffrey Epstein wants favorable terms at JP Morgan, Jes Staley really doesn't have the ability to say no to him. And by the way, if JP Morgan is going to deal with Israel, when Netanyahu lays down his terms rather than the terms that make sense to JP Morgan or the market, again, Jes Staley is not going to have much room for disagreeing with Israel or Epstein. Oh, that's why it might be helpful to put the video cameras inside the Kleenex boxes, which is exactly what we know Epstein did. But our government says, oh, golly gee, we just can't find any of the videos. And then our media says, if you think there's videos, even though we definitively know there was, you're a conspiracy theorist. And if you don't know, the term conspiracy theory was popularized by our government after the JFK assassination to make it seem like anyone who didn't agree with the official government story was crazy. And then all of mainstream media said anyone who doesn't believe in the official government story from that moment to this moment is nuts, insane. You should shut them up and never let them talk because they're so nuts. Please don't believe anything they say, only believe what the government says. That is awfully convenient.
When we come back from the break, we'll talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene sounding off on the Trump administration, listing her as a speaker at an event that she is not going to be a speaker at. We'll be right back.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Rich and powerful men abusing, assaulting, and abandoning young women. These rich and powerful men donate to the politicians in Washington, D.C., play golf with the elites in Washington, D.C. They are foreign leaders who we don't want to offend. They interact with our intelligence agencies that we don't want to disobey. There is something rotten in Washington.
And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
All those congressmen you just saw there are on the record as protecting the child rapists who were clients of Epstein. They have not prosecuted a single person outside of Epstein and Maxwell.
Yep.
Not one.
Is Trump engaging in this cover-up because he's in the Epstein files?
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff.
So as the government keeps telling us, yeah, there's other people. Yeah, they raped those girls. So what? We're gonna cover up for them. But why are you guys so mad?
A nation that chooses impunity for the rich and the powerful at the expense of our children is a nation that has lost its moral purpose. Are you on the side of the people? Are you on the side of America's children? Or are you on the side of the rich and powerful who've had their thumb on the scales and shafted Americans for decades?
The rest of the news media says you should not fight for positive change. If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere. That's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one.
Who do you guys use?
We have AT&T.
And how much do you pay per month?
$345, and that includes a company discount.
How many people?
5 phones.
$70 a line, right? I've started a wireless company called Noble Mobile that is trying to cut everyone's bills in half.
What would like a family of 4 cost?
The average Noble Mobile user is paying $42 a month, but also they're using their smartphone 17% less.
Okay, how does that work out?
We give you $20 back in cash every month based upon how much data you use or don't use. You know when you're doom scrolling or messing around on your phone, you're like, oh wait, I'm actually costing myself money right now. The goal with Noble Mobile is to encourage us to look up at our children's lovely faces, like touch grass, appreciate life. A friend of mine calls these things our rectangles of sadness. So we're trying to change that and improve everyone's relationships with their phones.
It's a very noble cause.
Well, thank you, sir. That's what it is.
Been on YouTube for 20 years.
The original political partner on YouTube, the Young Turks.
The Young Turks.
The Young Turks.
Godfather of independent media.
Favorite news platform by far. Oh, it's not even close.
The Young Turks. It's the largest online news show in the world.
I watched you guys before I had a channel at all.
And I watched Cenk, so Cenk's really the start of it all.
Big shout out to Cenk from Young Turks.
Cenk Uygur, founder of TYT, a man who probably needs no introduction.
Cenk, so great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you, David.
Fan you worked for a long time, man.
Anna Kasparian is one of the most followed and influential progressive women online.
I love Anna.
Your presence has been essential for me to really grow.
Do all of you know the Young Turks? This is why what Young Turks are doing is so important.
I've watched you for many years. You are insightful. I thank you for that.
I was going to introduce myself, but it sounds like you guys might know it.
Just remember, don't pop any bubble wrap because all that air comes from China.
I love white people.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Guys, if there was a time to join Young Turks, this is it. As you know, we have taken some controversial positions because we refuse to lie to you. And we're gonna tell you what's true, no matter what kind of pressure we get put under. So if you could become a member now, that would be incredible and really helpful. So hit the join button below on YouTube if you can, and everybody else, tyt.com/join. And you can also upgrade through the join button on YouTube, and you could donate through the tyt.com/join button too. We really appreciate it, guys. Let's go to our next story.
So let me tell you what I just found out. I found out that my name is on the website for the big GOP convention being planned in Dallas, Texas, coming up for the midterms here. And so yeah, my name's on the speakers list, and I found that absolutely hysterically funny. And I was like, well, what kind of speech would I even give? I mean, imagine being a Republican campaigning right now. What do you campaign on? I'm not a Democrat. I don't support Democrats either, but I certainly won't support President Trump and Republicans when they are not supporting the American people.
All right, they apparently asked her to be a speaker for Trump's Great American Comeback midterm election. Can't imagine a worse person as well, maybe me. So Anna has the full story.
Yeah, honestly, Cenk, I don't even think they asked her. I think she just happened to discover that her name was on the official list for the event as a speaker. And she was never asked. She didn't agree to it. She doesn't want to be part of it. So as of the production of this story today, Marjorie Taylor Greene's name is still listed as a potential speaker, with the official list allegedly coming out soon. Like, okay, let's pause for a second. Can you imagine, Cenk? Here's the list of the, I guess, unofficial speakers who haven't agreed to speak, but they're gonna put out the list anyway. Like, imagine you and I are putting an event together, a public event, and we just brainstorm on the various people that we want to invite to be speakers, but we haven't reached out to them, they haven't agreed, but we put out that brainstorming session for the public to see anyway. It seems like that's what they did.
Yeah, it's not like Trump's team has a lot of moral qualms about lying. So it's not, it's like, imagine, I'm picturing that conversation. We'd be like, whoa, people didn't agree to that. The Trump team's like, oh, who cares if they agreed or not? Let's just put it out there. Right, so there's two other people on the list, by the way, Anna, that I thought, are you sure they agreed to this too? One is John Cornyn, the former senator from Texas soon. And why is he the former senator? Because Trump endorsed Ken Paxton in the primary against him. So no, Cornyn is not going to be talking about the Great American Comeback midterm election because he's not even part of it. And then the second name that popped out at me was Melania. I don't think she's gonna go there.
No, she might speak. I mean, after all that news came out about Trump's executive assistant, whose name I've already forgotten, she started making Natalie Harp. Yeah, she started making a lot of public appearances, like, "Hey, remember me?" So who knows? She might. But I hear you on Cornyn. I agree. And by the way, they say that their official list is coming out soon. I should note that the convention is right around the corner. It's slated for September 9th and 10th. And by the way, this is the first time the RNC is hosting a midterm convention, which I hope doesn't get normalized. I hope Democrats don't start doing their own version of this. Like, please don't, but who knows, we'll see. According to the RNC, over the course of 2 nights this fall, Republicans from all over our great nation will convene in Dallas, Texas for a clear purpose: to support the outstanding slate of GOP candidates running in the midterm elections this fall and articulate all we have done and will continue to do to strive for what our founding, this is so hilarious, our founding fathers fought for 250 years ago, a more perfect union. You guys have been at like the forefront of violating speech rights here in the United States on behalf of your donors who support Israel. Please spare me your BS about how you value our constitutional rights. The website doesn't even really mention any candidates, by the way. Instead, it just kind of looks like it's promoting a Trump rally or some sort of celebration. And what exactly is it celebrating? They claim the America First agenda. Let's pause for laughter. What America First agenda? We're literally shelling out hundreds of billions of dollars to fight a war against Iran for Israel. So how are you gonna say that you're promoting an America First agenda? The American comeback is something else that they're apparently gonna celebrate. I don't know, Cenk. I don't think we ever came back. I think things have only further devolved. The American comeback, recognizing the hardworking Americans, innovators, entrepreneurs, manufacturers, farmers, ranchers and farmers. I like that he mentioned those people because they've definitely been shafted. First responders, veterans, law enforcement officers. Anyway, the list goes on. And they claim that this is to celebrate America's 250th birthday. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene is not buying it. Here's what she had to say.
Imagine being a Republican campaigning right now. What do you campaign on? Do you campaign on no more foreign wars while the president drug us into a war with Iran on behalf of Israel? Is that what you campaign on? Do you campaign on affordability, lowering the cost of housing and groceries and gasoline? That's pretty hard to do, especially under full Republican control. Affordability has not gotten better. Cost of housing hasn't gotten better. And gas and diesel is not better at all because of the president's broken campaign promises and betrayal of him running off and going to war with Iran and bombing a children's school, blowing up a bunch of kids and then totally denying it or claiming it's under investigation.
She then went on to suggest that maybe the Republicans would be better off focusing on what their bread and butter essentially is when it comes to campaigning, culture war nonsense.
What else do you campaign on? Oh, wait, stopping the trans agenda on children. Well, it's kind of tough when Senate Republicans refuse to pick up the bill, my bill, as a matter of fact, that would make it a felony to perform transgender surgeries and treatments on anyone under the age of 18. What do you campaign on? The Maha agenda? Oh, wait. They gave full protection to glyphosate. Kind of hard to campaign on Maha on that one. And COVID vaccines are still running rampant because it still has FDA approval. And then they approved another mRNA vaccine for the flu. Jeez, where do you go from there? Oh, we could talk about putting America first in our food supply, except the president just threw American cattlemen under the bus and is now going to import a bunch of foreign mystery meat. So it's pretty tough to find things to campaign on. I can't imagine what kind of speech I would give, which is why I won't be giving a speech at the GOP midterm convention in Dallas.
So she's done with the Republican Party, and that much is clear. Really quick point about glyphosate. While RFK Jr. claimed that he was going to fight hard to ban the use of glyphosate, obviously that didn't happen. What's even worse is just yesterday, Cenk, I did a report about what the Israelis are doing to southern Lebanon to basically make it uninhabitable, just like they did with Gaza. And one of the chemicals that they've been deploying in southern Lebanon is high levels of glyphosate. And we are basically spraying that on our food and consuming it. Fantastic. The other thing that I'll note is what she said about the ranchers getting shafted is 100% true. Trump did allow for tariff-free and discounted meat to come in from Argentina. Now, 30,000 pounds of that meat has now been recalled. We don't know exactly why, but obviously due to safety concerns. And our ranchers were upset, understandably so, because it's flooding the market with price-controlled meat because Trump wanted the meat sold at a 25% discount, which sounds like price fixing to me. But anyway, back over to you.
Socialism. Okay, so there's things that Marjorie Taylor Greene listed there that we agree with and we don't agree with. But what is clear is that that was their agenda and they didn't do it. They didn't do any of that agenda. I mean, they tried mass deportation. She didn't talk about that, but and then it didn't work and it became deeply unpopular and they shot a bunch of Americans. And by the way, a bunch of the right wingers and the podcasters turned on even the ICE enforcement as well. So she's right about the core message she's got there, which is, what are you gonna run on? You literally didn't do anything for Americans and you didn't even do your agenda, whether people agreed with it or didn't agree with it. What's the only thing you did? Start wars for Israel. And then they had the audacity to say what our founding fathers fought for 250 years ago. What did they fight for? Like, my God, I hope we serve a tiny little foreign country for the rest of our lives and we spend trillions of dollars fighting all their wars for them. And if they're ever going to slaughter a different set of people and keep them occupied for 60 years and like the most brutal fascism you could imagine, I hope to God they make America pay for it. I'm pretty sure they said the opposite. I'm pretty sure the founding fathers, including George Washington, said do not get entangled in foreign alliances, let alone serve another country completely. So they all warned about this, and unfortunately Trump has done the opposite of their warnings, and he's done the opposite of helping the average American. And Anna, one other thing, Israel pops up so often in these conversations, but it's not just about that issue. It's that they're a proxy for, do you care about the voters or the donors? If you cared about the voters, you would try to do your agenda, whether we agreed with it or not. But he hasn't tried to do almost any of that at all. Instead, he's been obsessed with Israel and doing everything they have commanded him to do, and he has 100% of what they've asked him to do. Okay, so that shows you that that's not normal. That's not what a normal government does. You don't have the Canadian Prime Minister going, what do they need in Bolivia? We got to do whatever Bolivia wants. That is extraordinarily abnormal. You do that when you're paid to do that, when you serve the donor class. And it's not just Israel they serve. They serve any donor that comes in and goes, you know what, that's it. I want you to snap up federal land and we need data centers. I need you to import beef from other countries. I need you to do this, this, and this. He's not just serving the foreign government, he's serving every corporate PAC that donated to his campaign. And that's why you've gotten absolutely nothing from him. And this is how our politics works. They never ever serve us and they take turns screwing us over. But Trump has done it in such spectacular fashion that he's even lost a third of his own base.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, his approval rating stands at 33%, which is even lower than Biden's was as he was leaving the White House. And Biden was not a popular president at all. Now, I want to pivot to a related story, similar theme, but it is a little different. So let's get into it. So there is a event coming up. So Turning Point USA has one of their big events coming up, and it has led, Turning Point USA has one of their big events coming up, and it's led to a lot of backlash because of the slate of speakers that have already been announced. Now, you got to remember in the last several months of Charlie Kirk's life, he was very vocal in his criticism toward the very notion of going to war with Iran. He was not in favor of it. In fact, he famously went to meet with Trump in the White House to discourage discourage him from going to war with Iran. He had become very critical of Israel to the point where Zionist donors had pulled money out of the organization. They were upset. So that's where Charlie Kirk was at. And it's probably because of the fact that he had a lot of face time with young conservatives who were also very critical of Israel, did not want to get dragged into endless wars. Now, fast forward to almost a year after Charlie Kirk gets assassinated, and Turning Point USA is kind of unrecognizable in the types of conservatives that they have decided to, get close to. So let's take a look at the slate of speakers. This is for the Turning Point USA America Love It or Leave It tour. And as you can tell, their speakers include individuals like Brandon Tatum, who carries water for Zionists, Ben Shapiro, who actually was not friends with Charlie Kirk, but obviously carries a lot of water for Israel. Alex Clark, Matt Nuclear, these are all people who kind of fall in line with the pro-war, pro-Israel message. I will note on October 21st, they have Tulsi Gabbard slated to speak. She's famously one of the former Trump administration officials when she was the director of national intelligence, who was actually giving Trump good advice about how we should not get dragged into a war with Iran because they were not building nuclear weapons. But most of the speakers are obviously pro-Iran war and they're Zionists. Now, back in April, the New York Times wrote regarding the University of Arkansas Turning Point USA chapter 6 months after Charlie Kirk was killed. And they themselves said, look, this organization is unrecognizable. Let's put that up. The campus chapter would no longer be affiliated with Turning Point USA, the chapter president said in a statement. The national group, he added, had lost sight of conservative policy principles and values in the post-Kirk era. We do not recognize the way others have attempted to speak for him, he wrote in a March 16th news release. The new leaders, he said, had been manipulative by saying things like Charlie would have wanted and Charlie would have said. And it's usually Charlie would have wanted to support Israel on this. Charlie would have wanted or would have supported the war, that kind of stuff. And if you have any question in your mind about where Charlie Kirk stood on the issue of war with Iran, let me give you a little reminder.
Is a nuclear weapon against Iran a threat to America? Probably, could be. It's a threat to Israel, but is it a threat to America? I mean, India has nuclear weapons. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Is them getting a nuclear weapon good? No, we're not making that argument. No one here is making that argument. Of course not. But lots of things are bad that we shouldn't risk destroying America to stop. Let me say that again. There's lots of bad things that we should not risk destroying America to stop. And for me, this is a hard and fast red line. We did not run on war with Iran. We did not run on striking Iran. And I know the president agrees. I know the president agrees with this, which is why he's trying to actually talk to Iran. And the people that are advocates for preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon by all means necessary, they're the same architects that were perfectly fine with the Iraq war, the same designers of the Iraq war.
And look, the backlash that TPUSA is now getting over their slate of speakers, I think is justified. However, I would argue that include those voices, but do what Charlie Kirk did, which is invite debate at these types of events. I remember one of the Turning Point USA events that happened, almost right before Charlie Kirk was killed was when you had Josh Hammer debating Dave Smith on the topic of Israel and war with Iran, but I could be wrong about that. Either way, it was a debate and it was fascinating. I watched it, I enjoyed it, and it doesn't really seem like you're gonna get that at this event. It seems like it's just gonna be, a group of people nodding along because they all agree with the same pro-war neoconservative narrative.
Yeah, that whole Charlie would have wanted thing is super obnoxious. But if you're gonna do that, at least be accurate about it based on things he actually said. If you take the things he actually said and then flip them on its head and say the exact opposite, okay, now you're putting words in his mouth, and in a way that's really scummy and immoral and makes me question why you're doing that. What's your agenda? Why are you putting words in a dead man's mouth? By the way, every time I see videos like that of him, I can't believe he's dead. I can't believe he's so young. And
I know.
So somebody killed him. So now they're taking it in a different direction. Anna, you make a really good point. You invite different speakers, as Charlie Kirk did. That's a fact, right? And so they've got a spirited debate. Okay, then maybe you're doing what Charlie would have wanted. Maybe you could invite Tucker Carlson, as Charlie Kirk did. Oh, you're not going to do that? Huh, that's interesting. So everybody's pro-Israel that's speaking. You're not going to allow any right-wing voices, or you could have me. I can come speak. Oh, that sounds outrageous, right? I mean, Charlie would never. Oh, right, Charlie did invite me to one of your conferences, and I did go and speak. But now, absolutely not. No anti-Israel, anti-war voices allowed. So when you remember that he invited me, you remember that there's a giant range of people he wanted to talk to. No longer a giant range, now a tiny little range. And by the way, Erica Kirk, whatever you think of her, is super pro-Israel. And so she has taken the organization in a different direction, which is 100% loyalty to a different country, to Israel. So that's why you're getting what you're getting. She's running the organization now, and she doesn't agree with it. Apparently, based on both her statements and her actions, she doesn't agree with her late husband. She thinks, yes, we should serve Israel, and there should be no diversity of opinion within TPUSA or the right-wing movement.
That's not going to bode well for the organization, considering where young conservatives are at on that very issue. But we'll see how it all plays out. For now, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about everyone realizing that Dana Bash is full of it and too biased to cover certain subjects. We'll be right back.
This earth warming and carbon is actually healthy for us.
All right, we're going to members on our website. Mongoose Dragon says, did Hakeem Jeffries take acting lessons from Schumer? It's funny. Jared Lamano says, makes me so mad when we think about all the things when I think about all the things I had to overcome and endure to make it out of poverty and be secure. Only to have Trump and these idiots destroy our economic system and potentially the value of our currency, amongst the other catastrophes. And then you have to hope that the Democrats don't make it worse after. WTF. Jared, everybody agrees with you, WTF, and it is maddening. Mo Larry Cheese says Greg Bovino should be in prison for war crimes in Minnesota. Moonshine Dragon says glyphosate, I'm so bad at pronouncing words like that. Anyway, he's being used on our forests, drying out, causes fires and logging. On Twitch, Rural says, I don't know why Israel wants to create a world war when they're more than likely to lose everything and more. That's because fascists lose their minds. Why did Germany attack Russia to create a second front in the middle of winter? It was the craziest thing you've ever seen, because fascists are crazy. They're not acting rationally. No Mass Dragon says, I still think Ukraine attacked Iranian ship on Israeli intelligence. That's certainly possible, but they had to have a motivation for it. They believe that, probably correctly, that Israel controls America, and they had to do Israel a favor to get America to help them. YouTube members, D. Mitchell says, we're in no position to be threatening anyone, let alone Russia. Purple Bus Will says, diplomacy is better than interceptors, here. Oryx Saxon says, but Ben Shapiro told me Epstein had nothing to do with Israel. Dan Kroll says Epstein is in Israel. That's another conspiracy theory. I wouldn't go that far, but at this point, I'm like, well, I'll hear what you got.
There's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiot.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys, and all of these wonderful Young Turks members, tyt.com/join to become one of the Young Turks. All right, let's do our next story.
Let's take it.
I am done
So don't any reporter ask me again about Hasan Piker. It's not what November is about. Republicans are trying to make it. They're trying to divide us. And we got to stop letting them try to divide us. I don't agree with Hasan Piker on a lot of stuff. And I really don't agree with him on some of the woman things he said. And I'm still trying to figure out, is it the reason he exercises and looks buff is why he has so many followers. But having said that, I want to talk to you for a minute about what November is about.
All right, that was Debbie Dingell. She's a Democratic representative from Michigan. She has complicated views on Hasan. I'm going to tell you why she's not fully against him, something that's not shared often. But we also have a list of traitors. All the Democrats trying to make sure that Abdul el-Sayed loses by attacking Hasan and Abdul's connection to Hasan. They have betrayed all of the Democratic voters. And they did it for obvious reasons, because they're paid by the Israeli lobby. That's also why they have the same exact talking point. So we'll give you that list, and we'll give you all the complications that come out of this story. And then I want to talk about the press's reaction on whether they're ever going to question anything Mike Rogers does. So Anna, tell us the whole story.
So this all really started with, at first, right-wingers, and then later establishment Democrats intentionally twisting Hasan's words in regard to what he had to say about wrongfully conflating Zionism and the acts against humanity that's been carried out by Israel with the entire Jewish population. It's a point that we make on this show on a regular basis. It is unfair to treat Jewish people as a monolith. But those statements were taken out of context and twisted specifically to hurt Abdul el-Sayed, who was campaigning with Hasan Piker at his side at some of these campaign events. With that in mind, let's take a look at what Hasan had to say.
People don't Israel any longer. And if Jews in America keep putting this idea out there that they are singularly invested in Israel, eventually someone's going to come around and take action, not against the state of Israel, mind you, but against American Jews.
So you could argue that he could have articulated that better, but I know exactly what he meant because we've made the same point over and over again. There are plenty of Jewish Americans who are against what Israel has been doing. There are plenty of Jewish Americans who do not believe in the Zionist project or the idea that Palestinians should be persecuted in an apartheid state. There are plenty of Jewish Americans who have been speaking out against Israel as aggressively as we've been speaking out against Israel on this show. And to conflate them is unfair to them and is anti-Semitic. Now, with that in mind, as DropSite News explains, Piker's remarks were subsequently portrayed by right-wing accounts and politicians, including Republican Senate nominee Mike Rogers, as a call for violence against Jews. Piker even told the Washington Post what he actually meant in his statement. He was warning that associating American Jews broadly with Israel's actions could fuel anti-Semitism, much as Muslims in the United States have been associated with Islamic terrorist groups, which is also disgusting and intentionally done in order to drive hatred toward the Muslim population. Now, subsequently, mainstream media ran with that narrative. Of course they did. Our media is Zionist owned. I know people think that that's a controversial thing to say, but it is demonstrably true. But yeah, the media ran with this notion that Hasan was trying to direct violence toward the Jewish community. Fox News contributor Hugh Hewitt literally said last Friday, quote, "I can't stop talking about him," which might mean you have a problem. And of course, Hasan's comments are being directly tied to Abdul el-Sayed because that was the whole point. Okay, they're using Hasan specifically to attack Abdul el-Sayed to hurt his chances of winning a Senate seat in Michigan. So all of this led to, well, later I should note, there was a coordinated campaign of establishment Democrats who also came out. They put out very similar statements condemning Hasan while citing the same statement, twisting his words, making him out to be someone who's directing violence toward Jewish people. So this wasn't just a right-wing thing. This wasn't just a legacy media thing or mainstream media thing. Democrats got involved, thus helping the Republican in this Senate race. I want to be very clear about that. So let's take a look at this list. Our new associate producer, Will Hurd, please say thank you because he worked really hard to put this list together. And include all of the money that these Democrats have taken. So here's the list of the Democrats who are on the record not only attacking Hasan, but doing so in a way that obviously hurts Abdul al-Sayed's chances of winning the Senate seat. You've got Senator Elisa Slotkin, who's taken over $500,000 in bribes from the Israel lobby. Unsurprisingly, Josh Gottheimer, who's taken $2.3 million from the Israel lobby. Jackie Rosen, more than $2 million. Susie Lee, nearly $1 million. Hakeem Jeffries, I mean, we've talked about Hakeem Jeffries quite a bit on this show this week. And he's taken, I mean, that number's actually a little low. Last time I did the research on this, it was close to $1.7 million in bribes from the Israel lobby. Richie Torres, over $2 million in bribes. These are all Democratic lawmakers who went out of their way to attack, okay? Allegedly just attack Hasan, but they did it in a way that clearly hurts Abdul al-Sayed's chances. And of course, the total amount of Israel lobby bribes toward the Democrats who have been speaking out, $21,601,455. Israel lobby working overtime to buy these disgusting, loathsome, corrupt politicians. So as you saw, 2 Michigan lawmakers are on that list. Representative Hillary Scholten, and then you also have Senator Elisa Slotkin. So Scholten has specifically said, quote, "I will not campaign with someone who continues to associate with Hasan Piker." Okay, great. So you're helping the Republican win as a Democrat, because at the end of the day, you're the same thing, aren't you? Democrat, Republican, as long as you guys are part of the establishment, taking that donor cash, you're the same thing. So she's gonna go and root for her team. That's what she's doing. Unlike Dingell, Michiganders, like Dingell, I should say, Michiganders are tired of this. So one Michigander even told the Washington Post in response to Scholten's comments, quote, "Your inflammatory rhetoric has nothing to do with creating a better economic future for the people of West Michigan and everything to do with protecting the pipeline of our tax dollars to Israel." And I actually want to go to the Dana Bash video now, because Dana Bash, of course, loves to attack Hasan Piker. She's a hardcore Zionist, so much so that she's actually starting to get a lot of criticism from CNN employees for being too biased in covering any topic having to do with Israel. What's amazing, Cenk, is that she herself made a similar point to Hasan, and I want to show you the receipts. Let's take a look.
You may not have heard of left-wing streamer Hasan Piker until this year, when Democratic Michigan Senate candidate Abdul al-Sayed began campaigning with him. Just a reminder, Piker has excused sexual violence from Hamas terrorists. Now, the controversial relationship between the two entered new territory this week after Piker said this.
If Jews in America keep putting this idea out there that they are singularly invested in Israel, eventually someone's gonna come around and take action, not against the state of Israel, mind you, but against American Jews.
Well, Piker made that comment that American Jews who support Israel are responsible for actions taken against them. A picture of a Jewish Michigan state legislator was prominently displayed.
Okay, now I want to go to, as I said earlier, Dana Bash's video where she's making a similar point to Hasan. Let's take a look at that.
American Jews in Congress who support Israel and support what you just said say that a lot of the actions by you and your government are making Jews in the United States unsafe. Congresswoman Haley Stevens, she's running for Senate in Michigan, said Benjamin Netanyahu has made us less safe. He has frankly put Jews in an uncomfortable position across the country. Have you?
Well, it's made her uncomfortable because she can't stand up for the truth. She's trying to probably excuse anti-Semitism. You know,
she's not. I just want to explain. She's somebody who supports Israel. She supports funding Israel, which is diminishing big time among Democrats and even some Republicans in the United States Congress.
Dana Bash is a joke. And by the way, Hasan Piker did not dismiss rape carried out by Hamas. He dismissed the notion that it was systematically happening as an act of war. which there was no evidence of. It doesn't mean that he said Hamas has never raped anybody, which is what she's trying to make it out to be. But okay, whatever.
Okay.
Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, well, first of all, Dana Bash has, to use her words, excused the sexual violence by the IDF.
She has.
That's literal. There's stories out about how, including from Israeli human rights groups, the Israeli press, about how Israel systematically rapes detainees, male detainees, female detainees, and they do it in vicious ways, as even the New York Times has reported. But Dana Bash never wants to report on anything Israel does wrong, because as now even her CNN colleagues acknowledge, she's a massive and radical Zionist. And despite the fact that she's a radical Zionist that excuses every war crime of Israel, she then says something that is identical to Hasan's. But okay, she said it in the form of a question, but apparently that question is so outrageous that Abdullah al-Said should be canceled for Hasan suggesting the same exact thing. It's insane. But if you noticed, she also said in the question that that's Haley Stevens' comment. Now, Haley Stevens is very pro-Israel, as Dana Bash pointed out. That's weird that when Haley Stevens was running as Abdullah al-Said, Dana Bash and literally no one else in mainstream media as well ever made a big case about it. Hey, do you denounce Haley Stevens trying to get Jews killed in America? Oh, she's for Israel? And none of you said that. Same exact comments by Hasan. Hey, he's trying to get Jews killed in America. What's the difference? She's for Israel, he's against Israel in terms of their funding. And all of a sudden, Dana Bash goes from wonderful, perfectly reasonable comment to outrageous and trying to murder all Jews. What a preposterous liar she is. And every lie in foreign policy is told on behalf of Israel. Okay, but again, it's not just about Dana Bash. It's just one person in media, who cares? How many reporters asked Haley Stevens about those comments or suggested that they were somehow endangering Jews? Zero. How many reporters have asked that question when Hasan Piker said it? Literally every reporter in the country. So, gee, I wonder if this is coordinated. Gee, I wonder if it has to do with whether you support Israel or you don't. They just proved it to you. Full mask off moment. Now, speaking of mask off, how about Mike Rogers? Does anybody want to talk about Mike Rogers at all? The entire media, CNN, MS Now, and Fox News all magically agree. No, don't say anything about Mike Rogers. Don't ask him any questions. Don't talk about what he does. Don't talk about who he's connected to. Only Hasan Piker, only Abdullah al-Said. Attack. Oh, gee, you guys sound so objective. Now, look, let's be fair, Anna. Maybe Mike Rogers is pure as the German snow and he's never done anything wrong or been associated with anyone that's done anything wrong. That's weird. Because Mike Rogers has been advocating for the Iran war since 2006. You did not hear that wrong. I didn't say 2026. 2006, 20 years ago. You know what he said back then?
That's all that matters. Cenk, that's all that matters. He supports the war in Iran. So
yep.
Republican, Democrat, who cares? Who cares? He loves the war machine. So let's do whatever we can to help him win, even if you're a Democrat. Disgusting.
Yeah. Anna, you know what he said back then? He said, Iran is so close to having a nuclear weapon. We have to attack them right now. In fact, he used Benjamin Netanyahu's talking points over and over and over again for the last 20 years to try to start that war with Iran, having absolutely nothing to do with nukes that they did not develop in the last 20 years, as Mike Rogers has been lying about it on behalf of Israel for the last 20 years. So is anybody gonna ask him about being a warmonger? Is anyone gonna ask him about being preposterously wrong about all those allegations? Is anyone going to ask him to denounce someone who he is deeply connected to, Benjamin Netanyahu? Now, Benjamin Netanyahu has said a lot of terrible things and way worse than Hasan. He's referred to Amalek, and he's talked about Israel taking from the river to the sea. And we can go on and on, but you don't have to worry about what Netanyahu has said, because we can look at what Netanyahu has done. Killed over 75,000 people in Gaza, 175,000 injured. More child amputees in Gaza than the rest of the world combined. He starved kids to death, 23,000 dead children in Gaza. But not one reporter in America has asked Mike Rogers, do you denounce Benjamin Netanyahu? No, they think being friends and allies and, let's be honest, a servant of a genocidal maniac is wonderful and beyond reproach. They can't even think of asking a question about it. How dare you question that? But did you hear what a streamer said? Oh, it's the same exact thing Haley Stevens said and Dana Bash said. Shut up. We're trying to destroy people here on behalf of Israel. You guys are so obvious. Okay, now that's not all. I can go all day on this, but I'll give you one more for now, Anna. Mike Rogers has a guy on his staff in his youth outreach program that was part of the Young Republicans WhatsApp group where they said things like, I love Hitler. So are you gonna ask Mike Rogers, not about a guy he campaigned with, but a guy who's his employee working on this staff right now, who was connected to people who love Nazis? That seems deeply anti-Semitic. Shh, it doesn't matter if you love Nazis. It doesn't matter, nothing matters. It doesn't matter if you endanger Jews. They don't care about that at all. They don't even care if you're connected to Nazis. The only thing they care about is, do you serve Israel? If you do, we'll never ask any questions. We'll never ask you to denounce anyone. But if you don't support Israel, we will destroy you all in unison, all at the same time, all with the same talking point. But we are objective press. No, I wouldn't insult the Israeli press by calling you Israeli press. You're Israeli propaganda for the Israeli government. The Israeli press is way better than this disgusting crap in America that Israel forces upon us.
Yeah, in fact, Israeli media is like shockingly honest about what the government's intentions are because, they're writing and broadcasting to the Israeli population, which overwhelmingly supports what the government of Israel is doing. So if you want the truth about what's actually gonna happen and what the Israelis are thinking, consume Israeli media. You will not be steered in the wrong direction, I promise you that. But let's go back to US media on this matter. And I wanna kind of start off by showing you this moment of Dana Bash interviewing Pramila Jayapal in late 2023. Take a look.
I've seen a lot of progressive women, generally speaking, they're quick to defend women's rights and speak out against using rape as a weapon of war, but downright silent on what we saw on October 7th.
And I've condemned what Hamas has done. I've condemned
specifically
all of the actions. Absolutely, the rape, of course. But I think we have to remember that Israel is a democracy. That is why they are a strong ally of ours. And if they do not comply with international humanitarian law, they are bringing themselves to a place that makes it much more difficult strategically for them to be able to build the kinds of allies, to keep public opinion with them. And frankly, morally, I think we cannot say that one war crime deserves another.
In fact, in that same interview, Pramila Jayapal brought up the amount of children, the number of children who had already been slaughtered at that point in late 2023 by Israel in Gaza. And Dana Bash's response was, at least you don't see Israelis raping Palestinians. Except, we all witnessed that horrific video featuring IDF soldiers gang raping a Palestinian hostage at one of their torture prisons. Every single one of those IDF soldiers had the charges dropped because the Israeli public was outraged that they might face criminal prosecution for doing on camera what we all saw them do. Okay, just wanted to make that point real quick. But I bring up that old video to show you what was the start of some of the former and now current CNN employees kind of turning on Dana Bash and realizing she's kind of lost the plot and she's too biased to cover this particular topic accurately. So Justin Baragona spoke to foreign and current CNN employees who aren't happy with Bash being, completely biased in her Israel commentary, especially following October 7th. One CNN insider told Zateo, quote, I think that Dana, her background and her pattern of behaviors are pretty consistent. She's a huge advocate for the state of Israel and just doesn't really conceal that very well. No, she certainly does not. Baragona added that it's the way that Bash conducts herself on air that CNN sources pointed to as evidence of her personally crazy and biased approach toward covering Israel and Gaza, especially since the October 7th attacks by Hamas. And that is certainly evident by this piece from 2024. Take a look.
Many of these protests started peacefully with legitimate questions about the war, but in many cases, they lost the plot. They're calling for a ceasefire. Well, there was a ceasefire on October 6th, the day before Hamas terrorists brutally murdered more than 1,000 people inside Israel and took hundreds more as hostages. This hour, I'll speak to an American-Israeli family whose son is still held captive by Hamas since that horrifying day that brought us to this moment. You don't hear the pro-Palestinian protesters talking about that. We will. Now, protesting the way the Israeli government, the Israeli prime minister is prosecuting the retaliatory war against Hamas is one thing. Making Jewish students feel unsafe at their own schools is unacceptable, and it is happening way too much right now.
So referring to that very video that I just showed you, one former CNN staffer told Zateo, quote, you know, Dana Bash has said all these stupid things about how there was a ceasefire on October 6th, as if everything was just completely hunky-dory the day before the 7th happened. And that's a common trick that's played by Israel supporters. They pretend as though Israel didn't have a policy of mowing the lawn where they would just go into Gaza and slaughter people. They don't talk about the fact that Israel would limit the amount of food and water allowed into the Gaza Strip. I mean, the persecution, the fact that there was that one protest of Palestinians where they just simply walked up to the border between Israel and Gaza and they got shot and killed just for doing that. The asymmetric type of situation Palestinians in Gaza find themselves in, where they're basically like in a fishbowl with no military equipment, certainly nothing close to what the Israelis have, no defense capability the way the Israelis have with the Iron Dome. And so they're just, out there, out in the open, readily available for the IDF to slaughter whenever they like, whenever they want. They've flattened Gaza. Like, Jake, the thing that's amazing to me is at this point, after you see the aerial footage of Gaza flattened, after it is obvious that the Israelis made good on their genocidal statements prior to flattening Gaza. They said it and then they did it. You still have people like Dana Bash defending them. What happened? I thought we were supposed to ignore those unhinged statements from those unhinged members of the Knesset because they're not actually gonna carry it out. But now that they've actually carried it out, Dana, do you have any thoughts about that?
And think about that. So we're all supposed to, the entire country, that's all that anybody's talking about, is supposed to care about what Hasan Piker, a streamer on Twitch, said. But when we say, but Ben Gvir and Smotrich said that they should commit genocide and murder everyone, don't talk about that. Shh. No, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean, what do you mean? Hasan's a streamer. They're in the cabinet. They're in the Israeli cabinet. They have incredibly important positions. Israel Katz has also said genocidal things. But Netanyahu has said genocidal things. In fact, things like from the river to the sea that they said was the worst thing you could possibly say. Netanyahu did it and he's now in the middle of carrying it out. But whenever it's the Israelis, shh, don't say anything. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. Don't talk about it. Don't denounce it. Oh my God, a streamer said something. Let's all panic. So it's so obviously disingenuous. Now, Dana Bash in particular is so over the top. Women's rights groups haven't said anything about Hamas. Well, Dana, do you care about kids? My guess is she would say, oh, of course I support kids. Oh, but yet you haven't said anything about the 23,000 kids that Netanyahu and the Israeli government murdered in Gaza. Oh, no big deal. You saw there, 1,000 people on October 7th, and we were all pissed about it, right? And we're very clear on the record on it. The other day, somebody criticized us for being pissed about October 7th. No, of course I was pissed about that. We're for peace. We don't want anybody getting hurt. But then she turns around and going, 1,000 killed in Israel, worst thing since the Holocaust. 75,000 killed. According to the IDF's own internal numbers, 83% civilian kill ratio. Worse than Hamas, worse than Hezbollah, worse than any terrorist group in the world right now. That's what Israel did in Gaza. 75,000 dead, and she goes, oh, who cares? Who cares? They're just lowly Palestinians, right, Dana? They're not precious Israelis. They're not the same, right? Not to you. They're beneath you, right? That's why you don't care about them at all. Now, and then of course they always hide behind religion. Oh, it's the dirtiest trick they have. So, but wait a minute, you've heard us now level Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, but also Richie Torres and Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham and Huckabee and all the radical Zionists, right? But wait, Wolf Blitzer is also on CNN, and he even worked for AIPAC. But you almost never see me mentioning Wolf Blitzer in this context. Why? Because Wolf Blitzer hasn't said anything crazy on air. We judge people based on what they say and what they do, not based on who they are. Now, on the other hand, people like Dana Bash are arguably deeply anti-Semitic. And she'll be like, oh, how dare you, right? Okay, well, let's prove it, right? We say it's about the government of Israel. Do not blame all Jews for it. That's crazy. 63% of Jewish Americans are opposed to the current government of Israel. And every time we say that, people like Dana Bash go, no, it's all the Jews. You're saying Jews. No, we're saying Israel. No, say Jews, it's all the Jews. No, Dana, it isn't all the Jews. They're not all maniacal, radical Zionists like you who enjoy genocides. In fact, they're opposed to it. But she lies over and over again. Anytime somebody criticizes Israel, she pretends they're criticizing Jewish people so she can hide behind Jewish people, so she can endanger Jewish people, just like she said, just like Haley Stevens said, just to protect their beloved Israel. And the reason they do that is because Zionism has turned into, especially for the radical Zionists, into an absurd cult. And okay, so that's all the media and all the Republicans, but the Democrats, one last thing about them. $21.6 million from Israel. And all the press again pretends, oh, that has nothing to do with them all supporting Israel and using their talking points at every turn, including John Ossoff, by the way. And then on top of that, remember that all those people attacking Abdul El-Sayed for his connections to Hasan, those Democrats have not attacked Mike Rogers. They have not pointed out anything about Mike Rogers or asked him to denounce anyone on his staff or Netanyahu. These people obviously get money from and serve Israel. That is super obvious to anyone, let alone a reporter. But the reporters in our country do the exact opposite, and what they say is, no, we're never gonna report the truth, and we don't care how many Palestinians are slaughtered, we don't care about their kids, and all we're gonna do is blame Hasan Piker and Abdul and make sure anyone opposed to Israel loses, right? Right? Dana Bash, have you asked one tough question of Haley Stevens? Have you asked one tough question of Mike Rogers? But again, it's not just Dana. Has anyone on cable news asked that question? Has any reporter in national media asked questions about Mike Rogers' connections to a genocidal maniac or potentially a Nazi on his own staff? Nope, nope. As long as you kneel to Israel, the radical lunatic Zionists, not Jewish Americans, and I know what she's gonna say. No, all Jews, right, Dana? That's what you say every time. Well, you don't speak for my Jewish friends, you don't speak for my Jewish family, you don't speak for any Jews other than your lunatic radical Zionist friends who think that a genocide is no big deal and slaughtering 23,000 kids is no big deal as long as Israel does it. But my God, what a streamer said is such a big deal, even if they said the same exact thing as you said. Objective, not even close. These are the most biased, disgusting propagandists pretending to be reporters. I hope I was clear enough. All right, when we come back, I'm sorry, my earpiece fell off, so I can't even hear if Anna's talking. When we come back, or when I come back, Aisha Wahab, who just took Eric Swalwell's seat, amazing candidate, and now Congresswoman. She's also running in November again, so don't miss that conversation. A very important race in the country. We'll talk about that with the Congresswoman when we return.
You may not have heard of Hasan Piker.
All right, back on the revolution. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. We asked you guys to replace some of the incumbents. Well, we have someone today who's replaced an incumbent. Aisha Wahab is joining us. She ran for Eric Swalwell's old congressional seat in California in 2014 and won. But there's one more race to go, even though she's in Congress now. That sounds complicated. We're going to explain that to you. But first, Congresswoman Wahab, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate being here.
Yeah, no problem. So let's break this down first. So there's two different elections here: a special election because Swalwell stepped down and is no longer in Congress, and then there's a November general election. So what has been determined and what is yet still to be decided?
So I am going to be the placeholder for the time being till about December, January timeframe, and being sworn in this upcoming week. But November is still at play, and we are unsure if AIPAC or anybody else is going to play into the race.
And so in the special election and in the primaries, they seem to have played into the race. So how much money did they spend against you?
Roughly about 6.4 million.
Damn, I have this right here. I collected some of those tears from your race. So 6.4 million wasted. Nice job, excellent job. So now you guys are going to do it again. You're running against Melissa Hernandez, and so since it's a special election, you fill the rest of the time, but you have a different election for the next term, right? So that's in November, and in California, 2 Democrats can run against each other because it's the top 2 finishers. So do you have a sense of whether AIPAC is going to come in with millions of dollars to help her again, or not yet?
I honestly don't know what AIPAC's going to do. It was unnecessary for them to come into the race to begin with. Literally, all my Jewish colleagues called them and said, "What are you guys doing?" She's the Dem endorsed candidate. She's backed by her locals. All the local newspapers even endorsed me. Law enforcement, Our Revolution. I built a broad coalition, and strictly just because I believe in human rights. They came in with that much money, and they have money to burn. So I'm not sure if they're going to come in November. I'm hoping that they just let it go and move on. I've already completed 3 different elections as the top vote getter, so I'm hoping that they just let it go.
Your opponent, despite getting all these millions of dollars to her benefit in these elections, I'm sure she's been very objective and critical of Israel's genocide anyway, right?
Yeah, she gave the canned statement that everybody tends to give, every elected official. We were asked in a forum, all other forums and debates she has avoided and dodged. She has dodged reporters on this topic and much more. I've been very, very clear that human rights is not a zero-sum game. You can support the Palestinian people as well as support the rights of Israelis. However, one over another does not necessarily need to happen. So I've been very clear on human rights across the board internationally, regardless of the community, even here in the US, where we're talking about kids being in detention centers and lawlessness of what we're seeing through our federal government.
So I'm going to go back and forth between Aisha and Representative Wahab, because Aisha's also was a California state legislature. She was a mayor pro tem. She was Hayward City Council. She's actually the first Afghan-American woman elected to any public office in the US. But Aisha, you built this interesting, surprising coalition, as you mentioned there. So how'd you do that? Because there's such contentious issues here. It seems hard to bring people together.
Yeah, sometimes I'm surprised by who's willing to support me. The reality is my work ethic is what drives me, right? I will help anybody and everybody. I will listen to anybody and everybody. My door is always open. Even if I disagree with you, you will know where I sit. So you may not like what I have to say. You may not like the environment of what is going on, but I'm usually pretty straightforward about what is going on, where my mindset is, and I think a lot of people in my district appreciate it. Whereas my opponent, she was doing things where she was stating that Republican supporter and she's going to fight for Republican values, and then later she's, fighting for Democratic values. And I'm the only candidate endorsed by the Democratic Party, and yet they still played a lot of games.
So. A lot of mainstream media would now shift to, okay, are you DSA and to what degree are you a communist, or that type of nonsense, right? But there are real divisions within the Democratic Party. There's the establishment, and opposed to them are generally speaking, the progressives, right? So you're not in the establishment part of the party, you are in the progressive part of the party, I believe. I don't want to speak for you, you're about to tell us, right? But even within the progressives, there's the DSA branch, and that is real. There is a DSA branch, and people believe in different things, even if they're in the DSA branch. And then what I would describe as the populist left. So those are the economically populist point of view, money out of politics, Medicare for all, higher minimum wage, paid family leave, et cetera. Not to say that the DSA guys don't also agree with that, but the populist left mainly focuses on that and not so much on the cultural war issues. So can you tell us in your own words what part of the Democratic Party you're from?
So I consider myself a Democrat. I think there's a lot of people that will slap a label on me. And for me, it really depends on the issue. I focus on issue per issue per issue and policy in front of me. The reality is that I do believe in Medicare for all. I do believe that our seniors on Social Security and those that are in disability and the vulnerable community needs to be prioritized, and human beings and people need to be prioritized in this country. I don't actually think it's a left or right issue at this point. I'm seeing so many Republicans even agree with this, right? As far as, there's a lot of othering, and I get othered all day, every day as an Afghan, as a Muslim, as a foster care kid, as a daughter of refugees, and so much more. So I have enough labels to worry about labeling myself. I just want to do good policy, really prioritize vulnerable community members and help where I can. And sometimes that is going against our Democratic Party establishment and elites, because sometimes they're out of touch, right? They're genuinely out of touch, and they don't actually know what regular people are struggling with. People are literally struggling to turn on their lights and have a roof over their head. And I truly want to just help them. That is my priority.
So that leads to the most important thing, because all these red herrings are thrown out like as if abolishing Thanksgiving was a priority for anyone, right? So instead of like asking you, is this a priority or is this the thing that you care about? Let me just flat out ask you, tell us what your priorities are. Give us a sense of your top 3 or 4 priorities so we know not what any opinion you've had since 1987, but what you're actually going to do if you're in the House.
Definitely. So my ultimate priority is the American people, right? And I will go further and say the most vulnerable American people. And it depends on the issue. When we're talking about education, obviously it's the students and the teachers that are struggling with education, right? One, to get paid, one, to not go in debt. And so, for me, that's how I'd like to approach things. I will say that one of the things that I would really like to work on is obviously housing at all income levels for all people, as well as, a big, massive reform on our immigration system, because I represent one of the most diverse districts in the nation. And a good chunk of our populace is foreign born. And at the same time, I think one of the biggest things that we need to focus on that has been tried and tried and tried again is an economic bill of rights. FDR tried to do it. I think that the American people, especially with the emergence of AI and much more, we're at the cusp of an industrial revolution that we've never seen, because it's literally every industry. And we have to protect workers. We have to make sure that the quality of life of American people are above everybody else, and really protecting that American dream. And there's so many other things when we're talking about our rights as a nation, our security, our future and just advancement. It's issue by issue, right? And I don't think that the federal government has really delivered to the American people to the scale that we need and want, both from the Republican side and the Democratic side. And that is why there's such apathy and disinterest in American politics, especially with the othering, rather than uniting the people, as these are our goals as a nation. The fact that infrastructure is considered, a partisan issue, right? It's really, really disappointing. So I just want to flag that there's a lot that we can work on, and something I'm committed to, but it is about the quality of life of the American people first and foremost, and human beings as a whole.
So Representative Wahab, so look, it puts you in a tough spot to ask you to denounce anyone in the Democratic Party, and we don't like the smear by proxy stuff. So I'm not going to get into specific names. But if you're in the House, one of the things that progressive voters are concerned about, and you're going to be in the House next week, right? At least for the rest of this term, is that people come in fighting. But when they get to Washington, they go, well, if Chuck Schumer says it, or Hakeem Jeffries says it, or whoever says it, right? Well, then I'm going to bow my head. Democratic leadership knows best, and you can't fight your colleagues. They're your beloved colleagues. As you can tell from my sarcasm, I do not agree. But you've got to tell us what you're actually going to do, because people are going to hold you to account on that. So if leadership says no to your priorities, Medicare for all or anything else, are you going to fight back, or do you find it outrageous to disagree with Democratic colleagues?
So, I served as the assistant majority leader in the Senate, both for Pro Tem McGuire and Pro Tem Lamone. And, they are the leaders of our House, if you will, right? Just for context. Serving as assistant majority leader, we're in conversations all the time about a lot of different issues. And I have, for example, told Pro Tem McGuire, I did not need an election where President Trump becomes reelected to tell you that people are suffering from affordability, right? And what are we really doing? I've also pushed back on a wide variety of issues. And I try to do it politely, right? We're colleagues. We can disagree and agree on some other issues, including my Democratic colleagues in the Bay Area. I disagree with them. And sometimes we'll push back very significantly on policy because I think it's short-sighted. And, that ruffles feathers, that upsets people. I have a reputation for that, unintentional, completely. I want to be respectful of all people, but at the same time, what is the point of sitting in the position if you're not going to advocate your best for the issues that you really care about and why you actually ran for office? That has been a core belief of mine. I will say that I've upset a lot of people inside and outside of the party, different stakeholders. There's been millions of dollars spent against me on non-election years as a state senator, and an effort to really push me away. But I have constantly pushed my leadership as well as my colleagues to understand these are the core issues people care about. Some of the things that you guys are trying to prioritize, it's important, but it's a back burner issue when people literally cannot afford a place to live here in California or in the Bay, or are going broke, or literally our fastest growing homeless demographic is our seniors. Our fastest demographic going back into the workforce is our seniors. We have massive layoffs in the Bay because of AI. What are we doing to protect people? And that is my biggest argument. And I think that my colleagues will all attest to the fact that I will keep challenging them, and it's annoying to them, but they also respect it.
Yeah, well, that sounds good to me. So I want to ask you about two issues in particular. So you actually fought to stop Wall Street from buying residential real estate, which we love. That's in the populist plank. That's one of only 6 issues in the populist plank. And so that's a big deal to us. But then magically, shockingly, I haven't been that shocked in a long time, that passed in Congress. And Trump didn't sign it, but after a period of time, if the president doesn't sign it, it becomes law, and so it did. But it didn't pass in California when you fought for it. And California is supposed to be like a super blue state. So I was just curious, what stopped it from passing in California?
So there's a couple of things. I actually introduced it before what happened in the federal government with a Republican colleague who is a former realtor with the California realtors in support as my lead witness. It failed in that committee, and then obviously after when we tried it again the second year for different reasons. Number one, the second one was a little bit different because it was kind of trying to protect folks in California, regarding the federal government and what that looks like if a veto took place or if that got signed. And then number one, there's a lot of Democrats that the real estate lobby has a very tight control on both the Capitol here in California as well as in DC, number one. Number two is the fact that, I hate to say it like this, but CalPERS invests heavily. So the California pension system in BlackRock and Blackstone, and people get very uncomfortable with touching people's retirement plans, if you will, and kind of those investment plans and what is that going to look like for thousands upon thousands of people. When we introduced it the very first time in Senate Judiciary, a lot of people were shocked to see a Republican and a Democrat come together and present this bill, number one. Number two, most people abstained, meaning, it's not a no, it's a polite no in some ways, but it's also I support it, but I'm nervous. I'm uncomfortable. I want to see if anybody else comes up on it. And our chair at the time was not supportive of it and asked people to abstain. But there was an appetite for it, but it's hard when a chair goes against it, right? So those are the logistics inside. Each individual member, different committees are made up a little bit more moderate. I think Senate Judiciary is very moderate. And I also think the Assembly is far more moderate than Senate as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah, moderate's a funny word, but okay, we'll leave that one there. And as you can see, that there's interest, financial interest at play here. So the last topic issue is Israel. So obviously, AIPAC is spending all that money against you means that you're at a bare minimum independent on this issue and not going to serve a foreign nation. But tell us what your opinion is on funding. Is it no offensive weapons, no defensive weapons, or zero, no funding to Israel?
So I have always said that it's a case-by-case issue, but on this particular issue, I have said no weapons. So I would be supporting, Block the Bombs Act and much more. But the reality is, and I have a lot of Jewish constituency members that have a really close tie to Israel and obviously respect the state itself and much more. But I also want to be clear that what has happened, and I've been very public about this, that I do consider it a genocide, and people will debate that all day. And I think the experts in many different areas, including in Israel, has stated it to be a genocide. I do believe that we need to hold government actors accountable. We should be able to criticize the nation as a whole. And for me, I do care a lot about humanitarian aid. And this is something I hold across the board, regardless of whether I agree with the regime or not, and most of the time I don't. I don't want regular people to suffer when there is a disagreement or there is war or there is conflict, because I'm a daughter of refugees. I've seen it. So many Afghan Americans are here because of war in Afghanistan. And right now we see a terrible regime in Afghanistan, and yet the people are suffering. And there are outside groups that still want war, and want the United States to come in with a military force, regardless of how many people are dying, right? And I think that is absolutely wrong. It's immoral. And for me, I have always been very critical of war, but also supporting humanitarian aid. And what we've seen in Israel and the surrounding areas is that blockades for food and water and just basic necessities for them to live, especially children, it's immoral, and we should be speaking out against that.
Yeah, good news, Aisha. Not a lot of people are denying the genocide. You're in politics, so that's why it's all the reporters and everybody else in politics. But like the rest of the country knows, the rest of the world knows, nearly every genocide scholar on earth knows, it's definitely a genocide. The only people making it a debate are the people who support Israel because they literally get paid by them.
100%, but I will also say I brought up a human rights resolution in the Senate, and that took a very long time and a lot of maneuvering. It has been held in the Assembly for over a year, yet we are able to stand for human rights in Ukraine, in Iran, in so many other nations, except for on this topic. So I have seen it firsthand. I have had the private conversations, been disappointed, but still pushed through. So, I will always try to continue to work for human rights across the board.
All right, no question. Within politics, it's deeply controversial.
Yeah.
The hundreds of millions of dollars the Israeli lobby spends, I'm sure, has nothing to do with that. Okay, so we end on fun. So we ask everybody these two questions just because I want people to get a sense of you guys, right? So tell us a TV show you're watching lately. I know on the campaign trail it's hard,
okay.
But yeah.
Reacher and House of Dragons, but I haven't finished anything just because I don't have the time.
House of Dragons, surprisingly good. I wasn't sure about it, and then I was like, wow.
Don't ruin the ending. I haven't watched it. I've watched like 4 episodes so far.
It's Game of Thrones. Are you crazy? I would never do spoilers. It's such a rookie move. Okay, you're about to have some Game of Thrones in Congress, so it makes sense that you're watching that. And then in high school, here's my other question. In high school, did you have extracurriculars, sports, band, anything?
Yes and no. I think I had a very different upbringing, and there's a lot of difficulty in that. And so, like I said, yes and no.
Okay, any hobbies?
Okay, if I have downtime, especially during the holidays where I'm truly down, I do play video games.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep.
So I'm not the right guy in our family to play video games with, but I do have a nephew who plays video games partially for a living. So maybe we could hook you guys up. But what games are you playing these days?
So I have yet to finish, and I haven't played obviously since the start of the year. But during a holiday time, I'll play the single player. Right, I think the last game I played was Ghosts of Yotai, and loved it. Loved the storyline. Loved everything about it. But that's kind of the vibe that I love.
All right, and Aisha, what's your website? So if people want to support you, since you don't take corporate PAC money, right?
No.
No corporate PAC money.
Not in this election. You know, I'll be honest with you. In the Senate, I faced 4 recalls, and our Senate leadership did raise funds for me from all sources, but within the limit. So nothing over $5,900. I think it was a lot less when I was running for re-election and defending ourselves in the recall, because I carried a civil rights bill. So that was a different circumstance, and 4 recalls is a lot.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for being honest about that. Appreciate that. Right? So you're not taking it anymore, not taking foreign government money. So where can people help?
AishaWahab.com. There's a donate link there, but AISHA Wahab, WAHAB.com.
Yeah, and we'll put the link down below as well if you guys want to check out their website. So Aisha Wahab now, well, you're about to get sworn in, but still good enough. Representative Wahab, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Bye.
Okay. Fascinating political revolution going on in our country. So you know, people are winning that wouldn't have won before. Aisha might have won anyway because she's been doing this a long time and has that incredible broad coalition. But yeah, a lot of older people and an old way of thinking, even if they're not physically old. Like Swalwell wasn't old in terms of age, but definitely had an old way of thinking, are now out, and new leaders are coming in. And from my perspective, that's a beautiful thing to see. All right, guys, what we're gonna do is a quick bonus episode for you all. I'm gonna interact with you guys, read your comments, and address your questions and thoughts. So we're gonna do that for the members. So hit the join button below on YouTube to become a member, or tyt.com/join. Members, I'll see you in a minute.